Here on the Creative Thinker Podcast, we discuss all theories, philosophy, and thought behind the creative process. And we hope that you find some inspiration along the way. Creative thinkers all across the globe, thank you once again for joining us on the Creative Thinker Podcast. My name is Henry Moon, and I'm joined by
Michael Vasquez.
Happy Mother's Day to those of you mothers out there. I hope it was great. I hope it was enriching, and I'm glad you're back. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I think is really important and integral to all creative life, and that is setting a good foundation. We're going to be doing that by talking to you a little bit about outlines. We've both been diving into writing quite a bit lately.
Yep.
And so just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and creating a good foundation and always returning to the roots and the basis. I use foundation so many times in that intro, returning to the basic elements of whatever craft that we are participating in. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to go back to the outline, everybody's least favorite day of English class, if I endeavor to say, and we're going to talk about perfecting that and revisiting it in our adult life. So to kick us off, first of all, Michael, thanks for being here. Of course. Second of all, what is the purpose of an outline?
Well, I looked it up because I didn't have a great response for it. It's like an outline is an outline. Duh. But because I'm kind of writing a short story novel, so I looked up what is the purpose? What is an outline for a novel? A novel outline, per Google, is often described as a roadmap or a blueprint for your story. It helps you see the big picture and plan the sequences of scenes, characters, and ideas that will become your novel. It's a simple, flexible technique to help all types of writers stay organized. I think that's a pretty good description.
I think that's a great description. Yeah. And I think unlike 8th grade English class, that we can cite Google here. Cool citing.
Yeah. I guess it's from milanote.com.
Ooh.
milanote.com.
Milla.
Guide, story outline.
Yeah, no, that's a good start. I think anything that is a foundation that's going to help us build a story from is going to be useful. And we're going to be talking a little bit about 5 and 3 act structure. But we're also just going to, after the technical portion of the episode, we're going to stop and do our what's inspiring us section of the episode. And then we'll jump into our actual projects and what we're struggling with, working on, etc.
Yeah.
I threw in struggling with for my own benefit. Michael is always on point. So, So what is the purpose of an outline? It's just about having a tool to start with. We were talking earlier, as we always do before the episode. Sorry, you don't get to be here for that.
Right.
Is that it grounds us in a beginning. So if you want to have a story and you don't have a story, you can start with anything. We talk about our exponential creation method, and in its essence, all that method is starting us with something. I know there was an episode I did a couple years ago that I just started with a pencil because that's what was in front of me. Yeah. And then we had this mad scientist. It was a fun episode, but the only way you can ask questions about your story and then start building out is by having that structure. So if I say you're alone in a room and that's your prompt, okay, well, what am I doing in that room? What does that room look like? It opens us up to questions. So a lot of people that I know who write look at outlines as very limiting things. They're like, I'm going to be controlled by this. This is going to rule my story. I'm going to be unable to progress from this outline. And when I've been using it, knowing that we were going to do this episode, it's the exact opposite. We talked earlier, my favorite analogy is of going swimming in a pool.
I really like this analogy.
If you went to a public pool and you jumped in, you know that you could swim laps, you know that you could dive in, you know that you could cannonball, somersault, you could do flips in the water, you could just sit on the bottom and meditate. All of these ideas and activities spring to mind knowing that you are in a public pool with very well-defined limits, very well-defined hours of activity. It's just an incredibly well-defined space. Would you cannonball into an ocean off of, say, like an oil liner or something like that? Probably not.
Right.
Much less expected outcome, much less expected safety. All of the things that are well-defined about that public pool are suddenly gone. You're in a totally separate environment. How can you be creative? Maybe wear those different color floaties that you always love that you're going to, get attention for at the public pool. All of those things are gone when you're dropped in, say, an ocean or an unidentified body of water that you can't see the bottom of. Let's say that. So the defining elements of the location you're in allow you to be creative and know the bounds of your creativity in a really beneficial way. And I think that is what's so great about an outline, and especially getting to use it again now. Like I haven't touched outlines in years, and I am really, really grateful that I did, because I'm working on a dramatic show for not for Spotify. It'll be on Spotify. But anyway, it's like a dramatized like radio show like they used to have, and about pirates. So it's going to be fun. But going from the initial idea to a really well fleshed out idea. I mean, I've spent maybe 3-4 hours on it, and I've already got 9 pages worth of outline. I mean, it's backstory, it's outline, it's things move quickly because you start with that foundation, that well-defined area of story, and then you just start populating it. And every day, at the beginning of my hour of writing, because that's about how much I can allot right now, I'll sit down, I'll read back over what I did this session before, and immediately I get these thoughts of like, well, what if, this would be more better defined if I said it like this, et cetera. And by the time I spent, 3 hours going through it, it's 3 repetitions. That's 3 edits I've done of everything that I did the day before. And that helps me build the story out and out and out. And I finally, for the first episode, it'll be a 5-episode thing, but for the first episode, I'm already to the point where I'm like, well, the only way I can make this better is if I added dialogue. And that's crazy to me that an outline can steer you forward that quickly. And it's just a really powerful tool. And so again, that's why I feel like it's really important. And I've had a really exciting process of jumping back in.
And I think that's one of the things that we talked about, we've talked about previously about, some of the creations that we had, or some of the writings, the short stories, the novels that we've written, we didn't get to finish it, or we got stuck at some point because, we talked about writing for someone else or doing projects for someone else. Typically it gives us like a deadline. We have some purpose or reason to finish it. The outline really helped me start putting some clear lines on the work of art. So where I was getting stuck on, or places that I was previously stuck on, that helped me push a little bit past that and really help, like you said earlier, build that foundation of the entire story. Because typically inspiration will bring you to a certain point and will give you those little snippets of writing where you can write a scene, but what brings those scenes together? What is the blueprint is that outline. That outline helps you bring purpose to those scenes and help you, really push forward the story with, to me, my biggest struggle has been the end point of the story. So it helps me push towards like the dramatic turns of the story that I'm not as strong at, because of course with me in D&D, I can leave some of that to the players, but when you're writing, it's all you. It's all your own story. You have to figure out what is the end, what is the middle, what is the climax, what is the conflict, and that outline has really helped me personally to just push through that. And super beneficial, super beneficial. And outlining may not be for everyone. It depends on your form of writing. And I think in the research that I've been doing, it's like it might not be for you, but try it. And try a couple different styles. And I know what we're going to be talking about today, it's a style. It might not be the style. It might not be your style. but try it and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then at least you gave it the old college try.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about like putting out your story beats, we just did that horror episode on elevator pitches.
Right.
And the great thing about an outline is like you can very quickly go from an outline to an elevator pitch. And the thing that I think is cool about that is that I can list the story beats to somebody in very short order. And if they're good story beats, then people get intrigued very quickly. It's like, oh no, what? Oh wow, they did what? They double crossed so and so. I never thought they'd do that. It's like people get really invested really quickly if you have really clear story beats. So I think that's just like another cool little side effect of an outline. But let's get into some more structure here.
Right.
So when we talk about 1 act or 5 act, or like, what are we talking about, Michael?
So when we're talking about like 1 act, 5 act, it's, like we said, it's the beginning of your story. So what I have written down for our notes for today is going to be a 3 act. And even in those 3 acts, there are other sequences that we're going to be talking about. And really what inspired this was, of course, talking to you about like, hey, let's actually write, let's put something down, pen to paper, and let's actually create something that we can work on real time as we're doing the podcast, and we can continue to update on our struggles, on our victories. And in doing this, I was researching, I think it's the Author Learning Center is where the website that I am getting a lot of the ideas for today's notes. And it was just how to outline a book and 7 easy steps, but it's a lot of steps.
No, it's heavy. It's hard to like, if you're beware anybody who says you can do something easy that involves writing like 1,000 words, or 100,000.
Yeah.
More accurately. So there's no such thing as easy when it comes to a book. No. As somebody who's only gotten in the ballpark, never crossed home plate, is very difficult. I mean, that is an undertaking. So, but the framework.
Yeah. So anyways, the framework, and again, there are different styles that you can do. The one that I think would probably be the easiest to talk about is like a linear framework, right? The story is going from point A to point B. We're not doing any type of time skips, or, you can go into like this circular, type of storytelling if you wanted to do. But, again, as you're looking into outlining a couple different ways, but what we're going to be talking about today is linear. So with a linear act structure, we have our beginning, our middle, and our end. Super crazy, right?
3 acts.
3 acts, beginning, middle, and end. And I believe you have a better knowledge of a 5 act.
Well, 5 act. So it's the same as everything is the same. It's just a different way to talk about it. But it's like Act 1 is the beginning. Act 2 is like rise in conflict. Act 3 is conflict. Act 4 is like false resolution. I think this is all from memory. I apologize. And then Act 5 is resolution. So like false resolution would be like any of your Avenger movies or Marvel movies where they have like, they think that they're going to beat the bad guy and then they get defeated and they have to go lick their wounds before coming back and finishing the movie. That's Act 4 if you were going to break it into a 5-act structure. But for acts 1, 2, and 3 in a 3-act structure, it's the beginning. Some people might refer to it as like the inciting incident, the catalyst, any of that stuff. It's like, this is the introduction to your characters, to your location, to everything that's going on day in the life of your main characters. And then what is setting them on the path to your story. That is Act 1 in my best summary. What do you have for Act 1?
That's 100% what I have here. It's a status quo, inciting incident, right? This is where in your story, you have to set up what is a day in the life of your main character or main characters. This is where you're, I guess, really seeing like what the world building is going to be like in your world. This is where you're drawing people in to the story. And then the predicament and lock-in is what, the place I took it from. That's what they coined it. But you're setting up your central conflict. You're setting up the story for what is about to come. And then we move on to
Well, I think I'm going to share one thing that I really think is cool before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
As an introduction to a show, I watch this like 3 times a year.
Oh yeah.
The introduction, the first scene of Mr. Robot, the TV show, is one of the greatest. I mean, to me, that is my favorite 5 minutes of TV I've ever seen, because it's such a good introduction, and it's such a like, you're supposed to grip the audience. In TV shows specifically, you have like an extra part of script that is like the what's it called? It's like the attention getter. I mean, I can't think of the actual term, but it's like they have like 1 minute, 1 to 5 minutes, depending on the show, at the beginning of the episode, to catch your attention and keep you coming back. Like The Office is really well known for their like opening joke, and then they go to commercials and they come back and the show starts. Yeah. And we get the real premise. But for Mr. Robot, first episode, pilot episode, first scene, he sits down with this guy that doesn't want him to sit down with him. He's at a coffee shop, and he just starts talking to him, asking him about how like he runs all these coffee shops, and he sits down with him and he starts asking him really personal things. That's like increasingly personal. Like at a certain point, it's like he's investigated him more or less, you know? Yeah. And then you realize that not only has this guy participated in some illicit website that is illegal, he's also like Mr. Robot has all of his identity, all of his money, all of his records, like has called the police and is literally just wasting this man's time sitting in front of him until the cops get there. And it immediately poses you with the question, because you learn nothing about Mr. Robot, the hacker. You learn nothing about him other than maybe he cares about people doing illegal things that they shouldn't be. You're immediately left with the question of who is this person and what is their daily life, which is like the dream scenario for somebody about to pitch a story. Is like, oh, you want to know about this story I'm working on? Hell yeah, here we go. Yeah. And I think that's such a brilliant piece of art. So if you can check it out, it's on YouTube, I think, that first scene, but it's out there. Go find it. Mr. Robot, pilot episode, first few minutes, quintessential act 1 in one scene. It's wonderful.
There was and of course the story is going to be great because I can't remember the title of the show.
Hell yeah.
That Molly Ann and I were watching, but her dad sent us a show to watch, and literally the intro scene, I believe this guy is like in Australia or something like that, and it's this desert kind of area, and it really sets the scene of like this kind of like not very populated place, and he comes into this gas station, and there's an interaction between the gas station clerk and the main character, and it's a weird kind of back and forth between them. But after that, you kind of get the character idea of the main character, and he's kind of quirky, he's kind of a smart ass, and but you also get the sense that, oh, this guy is not from here, because I think he has like an Irish accent, and so they're creating the framework there. And then as he's on the road driving away from this place, a chase ensues, and you have no idea like any context for what's happening, but you see this guy driving through Australia. This 18-wheeler is driving after him, and it's this chase scene that goes on for about 3 minutes maybe, where you're seeing the area and you're kind of getting a little bit of the landscape of what's going on and how much nothingness there is. And the end of it, guy gets hit. He wasn't expecting it, but guy gets T-boned, and they set it up, and he doesn't remember anything. And so it's like, so the main character, like, you're interested, like what was happening, what's going on, and you kind of take the perspective of this character who can't remember anything, because he is also trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, why am I here? Like, I have no memory of what's going on. I don't even remember my name, and so, you know, it really sets up the story good as far as like an act 1 beginning, and it's like 4 or 5 minutes. And I was like, as soon as that scene ended, Molly was like, so do you like it so far? I was like, I am hooked. I am hooked. Let's see where this goes. I want to know what is happening.
Yeah, no, that's a great example too. when you remember the name, send it to me.
I'm going to have to look it up, and then we're going to have to put it in the notes.
Yeah, for sure. So that's another good example where they set up a character, made him likable, and then they took that away from you while leaving his visual presence on screen, right? So now all of your answers or all of your questions are going to be answered through the course of the show.
Yeah.
But it may take a while.
Exactly.
And you've seen some of the fun, right? Some of the action scenes and all of the quippy lines and stuff. I imagine he's still sarcastic, even though he can't remember anything.
Exactly.
Right? Like, yeah. I mean, that's sick.
It really set up, and like that's just a good way to like set up. Within a couple minutes, especially like in a TV show and a film. Sometimes like TV shows will elongate stuff, because they know they have, 7, 8, 10 episodes. But that was just like quick to the point, drew you in. And I think there's something very special about that, and correlating it into your outline is, get something quick to draw them in. Don't wait too long and spend too much time. Like the status quo is supposed to drop the hints of what's going on in the world, but it's not supposed to be your world building document of, this is what's happening in this city and here. And like, sometimes I feel like when I've tried to sit down and write, I get too caught up in this is the beginning of the story, but this really needs to tell like everything about the world. And that's just not the case. It's about your characters day to day, what's going on in their life. So yeah, I think that's a really some good takeaways from the beginning of our TV shows that we like.
Yeah. So, I mean, you want to be, you brought up an interesting question. I just don't want to leave it on the table before we move on. How do you set up a character and then hint at something that is bigger than what that thing is? And I think that might even be a good topic for another episode. But I just want to say, like, if you have a full picture of your character, or at least a full picture of what your character is going through, dropping hints is an art form, and it's something that you're going to need to go through on your own. But there is a cool trick you can do to drop hints, which is just like, I don't want to overstate this. For me, what I like to do is drop physical hints to mental thoughts. So like, I don't know, say that main character's mother passed away or something like that. Then somebody talking about Mother's Day, your character gets quiet. Right? It's something that can be simple. It's like you're hinting at a bigger idea. Yeah. And because you show it and make note of it, your audience is going to be invested in that. And that's the simple way I like to think about it, is physical hints to emotional experiences. So I didn't want to leave that on the table. I think that's a really interesting idea. Maybe we'll dive into it more after, but let's move on to Act 2.
So this is the middle. Again, each one of these acts have a sequence that goes with it. So this will be sequence 3 in the total. If we're talking about sequence 1 being the status quo, 2 being our setting up of the central conflict, sequence 3 would be our first obstacle. This would be where the character faces their first, obstacle to reach their goal, whatever their goal is. And this is, again, a more building of the tension and pushing them past the point of no return. And I really like that idea of the character facing their decision to either continue towards their goal or back away from their goal and then get pushed back into whatever the main goal is, because no one wants to read about a safe character or watch a safe character. This is our hero, right? Pushing them past the point of no return.
I liked when I was in school, they always described it as this is the challenge portion of your script. I did a lot of script writing classes, but the challenge portion of your script, which just means that anything that can go wrong other than your surprise endings or things like that, they should at least be known to your character in Act 2. And I like what you said about being presented with. So this is reminding me of like every like mob movie, or like Let's Take Down the Mob movie, I guess. Act 2 is always like, this person decided to take it to the mob, and then the mob found out who they were because they were a little too successful. And now the main character is having the conversation with them or with somebody in their life saying, well, this got real and I don't really want to go down this path. And they're like, yeah, there's no way you're going back to that. We know who you are now.
Yeah.
And so, either you're going to get pummeled or you're coming into the fold, but either way, there's no way you're going back to your regular life, your everyday life. And I think that that's a really cool moment, because it immediately sort of triggers that, maybe not revenge response, but that anger, that righteous resentment in people. And they're just watching it going, how could you do that? They had such a good life before, and suddenly, you're taking that away. And it's like, that immediate fear of the unknown and stuff. It's like anything that can go wrong should go wrong, and it should go wrong in Act 2.
I think this is the point where maybe not the point, but it's close to the point. It just really reminds me of when Sam looks to Frodo and goes, this next step will be the furthest that I've ever been out of the Shire. And it's like, okay, once they push past that point, you really are past the point of no return, especially as, with Lord of the Rings, whenever they hit, Breeze Inn and that kind of central area where the ring race start attacking. It's like
they meet Aragorn.
They meet Aragorn, Strider. Like, that is the point of no return. You really, really cannot take a step back after that. It just reminded me of like, Mr. Frodo, this next step.
That YouTube video that's 10 hours of the first movie where it's like every time he takes a step, he said, this is the furthest from home I've ever been. Yeah. The internet is undefeated. So anyway. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So it's just pushing your characters to the limit and not allowing them to turn back. And that needs to be things that make sense and things that would make sense to you. Like if somebody came to your house and like shot your dog, you would try to find that person and get some sort of revenge or compensation or whatever.
Right.
That makes sense to us. John Wick, right? That makes sense to us. But if you say somebody like peed on your fence, like, you're not going to upend your life to go get that person, probably, so it's like you need the stakes to be right. Still disrespectful. But you're probably not going to upend your life and John Wick somebody, right?
Right. Probably not.
And then if you're in the process of that, you'd start to get scared that maybe this is getting a little out of hand, right?
For real.
You got 20 black SUVs pull up in front of your house and, whatever they have in mob movies. Then you're going to get a little bit freaked out and try to pull back. And what is the real consequence if you pull back?
Right.
You got to move. You got to join WITSEC or something. Not WITSEC, witness protection.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what do you do? And if you can keep at least the human elements of your story grounded in reality and the human experience, then your story is always going to be doing better than if you try to, like, fiction is great, and I'm all for throwing people into weird circumstances. I love sci-fi. Like, that's none of that stuff is ever going to happen. And if it is, it's going to be way after my lifetime. Right. So, I mean, I love throwing people into these strange situations, but if you get outside of what is relatable to people or what makes sense, I wrote a short story where somebody caught a bear on fire using flint. Okay. And it was like this magical environment, whatever. And it's like everybody stopped right there that I showed it to. It's like showed it like 10 people, like give feedback. Everybody stopped right there and they're like, there's no way they'd start a fire that easy. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's like none of these people had ever been camping. How did they know?
True.
How do they know? But still, that does not ring true. And that is where you need to stay in terms of your human interaction in your story. And if you start pushing it, then it's like you need to, like John Wick movies, if we're on that. By the time you get to the fourth John Wick movie, you're like, I mean, they killed his dog. Like, come on. Like, so they kept adding things and adding things over the series of movies. That's like, this is what keeps him going. This is why he's still doing this, even though we're 4 movies in.
Yeah. And I feel like, as another side point, I feel like sequences or sequel movies, as we're going through this outline, I feel like they go beginning, middle, end, middle, end, middle, end. Like you don't really have to go too much through the beginning because it's like it's already there and you can just go straight into action or whatever is happening kind of right away.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a solid observation.
Then our moving on to our next sequence, we have our midpoint. So this is sequence 4 of 8. So again, midpoint seems about right. This is a decisive moment where the main character faces the central conflict in some way, usually realizing something that changes him or her at this point. I think if your character doesn't have growth, then that's probably going to have some type of, issue, or it's not going to be as interesting.
Breaking Bad, Walter White getting cancer.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Easy. Well, it's not
return as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's weird. It's like that his mini arc, because I've only seen a couple episodes of Breaking Bad, but I feel like that kind of like getting cancer was a catalyst, and it has its own outline, which then pushes him to making meth, right? Or
just as an enthusiast for literature, man. Like that is such a good show because it doesn't. A lot of shows, especially, I mean, if you get into like laugh track shows, like they're so formulaic and they're so like there's no character development, like nothing changes. But there's shows that get away with so much where they don't have really people that are sponsoring like a Coca-Cola can in the episode and stuff like that, like the dirty money making part of the business. Breaking Bad is like, there was one episode that I was like, I hated when I watched it. I absolutely hated.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's just completely brilliant now. Like the older I get, the more I think about it. It's like, I still think about that show. It still makes me mad.
Yeah. That
one episode. And I'm like, it is brilliant in that way. And it's also brilliant that there's a pause in the insane action in the show. Anyway, it's the Fly episode. Just for anybody watching, the Fly episode is what frustrated me. I won't give anything else away because you haven't seen it, and you should, and you have to.
It is on the list to watch.
Okay. All right. I'm off my soapbox.
So, a decisive moment where the main character faces that central conflict in some way. I'm trying to think of like what, we hit Lord of the Rings. We've talked about a couple other movies. What would be a point that you could think of as that midpoint that's...
what was it one more time?
A decisive moment where the main character faces the central conflict in some way, usually realizing something changes usually realizing something that changes him or her.
I don't know where it's at in the movie, but if we're talking about like Star Wars, like when he kills Count Dooku, Anakin.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that's
like he's suddenly like dropping into the main conflict, even though he's been like on the periphery of it this whole time. It's like he's actually participating in one side of the war at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And so that moment sticks out to me first.
I was thinking
that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I was thinking more like maybe we're going back to like OG Star Wars, A New Hope, when Luke decides to join the rebellion and actually like pilot an X-wing, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of that, or maybe rescuing Leia. Princess Leia. I think that would be a point where they face a conflict because Vader strikes down Obi-Wan there, but they get away, and he realizes something about himself, about his force powers. Obi-Wan reaches out to him. He doesn't really have someone to like train him now at this point, and realizes that he is, maybe potentially, which we know in Star Wars canon now, not the last Jedi. But at that point, this was the Jedi. Like now he doesn't have a mentor anymore.
And he thought he was just some dude on Tatooine until that moment. And then he's like, well, now I'm a soldier in the war.
Exactly. Right? Now I have a reason to join, and I've been pushed more. I've seen Vader. I know this dark, mysterious character, and he just struck down my mentor. And now I faced him, and the stormtroopers pushed us back to Han's ship. And now we have to escape to potentially stop the Death Star. I think that is a good decisive moment in the middle of the movie.
That's a good one.
Doesn't
I buy
really,
that.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Going to sequence 5, we're talking about rising action. So again,
this is still Act 2, by the way. Just so you're following at home. The acts are broken up into sequences in the reference we found, and so we're still Act 2 has most of the sequences. So I think we get to sequence 6 before we move on to Act 3, and this is just to give you more broken down view.
Sequence 5 is our rising action, continuing to raise the stake for your main character, usually with a subplot of some sort that builds up to the main conflict. Man, there's a lot there. I would say, again, if we're going back to Star Wars, that rising action, I think would then be Luke going and joining the rebellion and the plans to attack the Death Star, and Han Solo being like, dude, I'm out. Like, I'm not getting any money for this. You think I'm going to attack the Death Star for free? Like, no way. So I think, it kind of builds that tension of the plan, the gathering to go and do this attack, or maybe even like, the fellowship whenever they all get together, or maybe even like going into Moria, like that rising action of like nothing's happening and there's still this tension. We're under the mountain that Gandalf doesn't want us to be under. All these people that are supposed to be here and welcome us are dead. Like, where do we go next?
I think in the 3 movies that is the Lord of the Rings, all squunched together, I would say this is Helm's Deep.
Oh, okay, yeah,
because it's a rise in action.
If we're looking at it, like that.
As like one solid chunk of literature, then you'd say it was Helm's Deep, or like the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie where they're fighting over the chest with the heart in it, and they're rolling down the hill, and it's like the 3 main characters are swashbuckling for this thing, and it's getting like increasingly more ridiculous till they're down on the beach. It's like, this is the initial conflict that leads to Act 3. Is my thought.
Yeah, I agree. Moving us into our last sequence of Act 2.
Nice.
Which would be the biggest obstacle. So this is when the main conflict of the highest point of tension in your story. This should be the most difficult moment for your character, so make it count. Again, going back to Star Wars, to me, this is Luke down in the trenches of the Death Star, and Obi-Wan's telling him, use the Force, Luke, and he's trying to look through it.
That's totally Act 3 though, right?
It kind of is. I think it really, Act 3, when we talk about the end, I think there's a twist here. And I think the twist is, as he's trying to say, like, use the Force, Vader comes in. So again, Act 3 is the end. Sequence 7 is the twist. Sequence 8 is the resolution. I would say the twist could also be Vader coming down, and he's in a starfighter, Han coming back and saving him. I think those are like twists that happen really quick, and then the resolution kind of happens there as he uses the Force. Potentially, I could be wrong. That's just how I'm kind of like seeing it, just without having put these outline points to a movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's everybody has their own opinion of where things line up, and that's totally okay. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying, like,
say it to my face.
Like, for me, I think my favorite movie, Rango. It's definitely one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. So the worst moment for the character is when everybody realizes, spoiler alert for Rango, anyway, that he's not who he says he is. That he's just like a chameleon that's out in the desert, and it's not like he was some mythical creature. It's not like he's lying this whole time, and the entire town knows it, and he's also being threatened for his life and the lives of the people he cares about. It's like, that is the lowest moment for him in the movie, and we saw him during the opening sequence just being completely alone and not enjoying life at all. So the lowest moment is like, this is an extreme emotional beat for your character, and so so when I think of him dropping into the trench, there's 2 sequences when he drops into the trench, right? And you're talking about the first one.
It might have been the first one. I think that would make the most sense.
So yeah, I mean, then I would totally agree. Like, this is the toughest moment where he has to weigh in the scales what he's doing, and is it worth dying for? Yeah. And so that, I think, is like totally like the new what's it called? Maverick movie, whatever that's called. Top Gun.
Yeah,
the new Top Gun. Like, when they first time they run through a practice of like doing the big flip maneuver that could make you pass out or whatever, and people realize, oh shit, this is real.
Yeah.
That's what I would think of as that moment, is like, maybe not for our main character, but for the people in the program that are learning from our main character for that movie. It's like, that's their biggest moment.
Yeah.
And when they realize, oh man, this is going to be rough. But yeah, because I think like the resolution moments is like, you usually have a good story, like a good beat between those moments. And I haven't seen New Hope in so long.
Yeah, I know. Neither have I. I feel bad. I'm rusty on that.
Oh, it's all good. I'm honing in on something because I feel like there's a nuance, maybe a nuance without a distinction. So that's my bad. But there is a nuance there that I think might get confusing. But,
I agree.
Let's talk about Act 3 and define that so that maybe it makes itself known in the process.
Yeah. So we have Act 3, the end. So we're going into sequence 7, talking about the twist. All right. Here's where your character deals with the remnants of the main conflict and realizes a new goal they have to achieve. Man, there's a lot there for that twist. And I feel like the twist, it kind of goes into sequence 8, which is our resolution, which is where you'll give the answer to your story's main question, thus resolving the conflict and bringing your story to a satisfying close or a cliffhanger. So talking a little bit more about the twist, you said, so it sounds like your mind is racing and going somewhere.
So the Green Hornet, the one with is it Seth Rogen?
Yes.
Curly hair guy that laughs funny. No offense to him. He laughs like a stoner. It's okay. But I feel like in that movie, they start off wanting to be heroes, and then they realize things get real, and then their friendship breaks up, and that's got to be the end of Act 2. Is they don't want to be together anymore, and then because of the reporter who's played by Cameron Diaz, because she has an eye for like what their goals should be and taking down like certain elements. They are focused on taking down the wrong bad guy. I feel like it's been so long since I've seen this. I don't know why it pops to my mind, but anyway. He eventually has to kill the main big bad, who has then turned himself into this like comic book villain in a very funny way. I forget that actor's name too, but he's really good at what he does. Yep. Anyway, so like there's the twist. I don't know. I'm kind of getting. I'm at a loss here for twist.
And so here's the thing too with kind
we
of
should have planned ahead. What is this?
That title of twist. Each outline doesn't have to be the same. And that's kind of, as I was listening to more videos about outlines from different authors, each person was like, this is what I do. And this is what works for me. So maybe there is no twist. Maybe you go from the biggest obstacle to resolution and there's no twist, right? So for me, when I was thinking of twist, I told you I just listened to Aragon. Or re-listened to the book. I know we've referenced it a couple times, especially in world building. Aragon by Christopher Paolini, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of that, spoilers if you wanted to read it, it's been out for a while.
Get over yourself.
Yeah. At the end of it, or close to the end, I think the twist is his mentor has died, and they've told him, as far as like him trying to become a dragon rider, his training is up to this point has been complete. And in a moment where he passes out, which is my one complaint with that movie, or with that show, but book, but I get that it is a part of the world building now. In his passed out state, some being reaches out to him, and you don't know who it is, but it pretty much says, your training is complete to this point. You need to come to this location to continue your training. I've been waiting for you. You need to come almost immediately. And then he wakes up from this dream. And I was like, as someone who's already read the books again, or read the books before, that was like, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I know what's happening. But to me, that was like a twist that that happened.
And it changes the goal, right? He thought he was done and ready to initiate whatever it was at that time, whether it was the war, I can't remember.
They just had this big battle, and it was like, okay, he was really like, what do I do next? Is the next part taking sides of these factions in the city that he's in, and everyone wants him to use his power for a certain reason, and then this being is like, no, you need to leave. I was like, oh, that's right. I totally forgot that part of the story happened. And then kind of the resolution, it was bringing that question. And like I said, the twist and resolution kind of go hand in hand together, because now he's got a new goal, which was not his goal before. And that kind of leaves it on a cliffhanger for what the next novel is going to be.
Well, like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, right? Where we find out that his dad is actually the villain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a twist.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
then
a good one.
But another way I've heard it described is like false ending, regroup, and ending.
Yes, that's good. I like that.
Is like, so we have this, what we thought was going to be the solution to our problem, which actually only makes it worse. And then we have to regroup and make sure everybody's still on board and everybody's okay. And then we reassemble and make our last stand. And the really, really big movies have like 30 of these, like the Avengers movies and stuff. It's like, there's so many like almost wins and then, you know, whatever. So on and on. So that's, that is the quickest, easiest. I mean, my goodness, that was like 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
It's about 45 minutes worth of, about 40 minutes.
I mean, that's a really quick flyover of what an outline is. I mean, that's, I mean, a lot of description on, and maybe some references of ways you can think about it. But I mean, in terms of learning an outline, that's a really quick way to talk about what this tool is.
Yeah. And I believe on the website that I took this from, that was actually a reduced form of what their outline was. I decided to, and this is just how my brain works, I broke that outline down and I looked at the website. I took the parts that I really wanted from it, and taking your advice of just like writing something and outlining and seeing what sticks, like for an hour or two, and see like what story I really wanted to go towards. I used this and just copy and pasted it, and then just tried to fill it out. And of course, this outline is great. I needed to do some world building, and I know we're running pretty long right now, but world building was the first thing that I did, and then I started on my outline. And that's, again, just me personally. And this really helped me out a lot.
So Author Learning Center is where we got the source material that we're sort of working from or distilling down. Really great resource. You should check it out.
Absolutely.
And they'll have even more information than what we were able to cover.
Exactly. I think that's where I was heading towards. They have a lot more stuff to add to what we had.
Yeah. So that's our technical portion. And now we get to talk about the fun stuff right before jumping into more fun stuff, which is going to be what we're actually working on. And it's just some more reflective thoughts on what it's like to use an outline now and you know, how it speeds up or hinders the process, that sort of thing. So, Michael, what is inspiring you this week?
Well, on the topic of outlines, no, that it's really been inspiring me. Just doing the research. Whenever I go into research, it really inspires me because, you get to see a different point of view from the authors. And so the video that really was like, I want to go back, watch this video and break it down, is called The 12 Stages of the Hero's Journey. And that broke down the outline in a way that makes sense to me, where I already have this framework of the outline, and then the story beats that the person that's in the interview or the person describing in the video, it just made a lot of sense for me as you follow the main character or main characters and see what their narrative journey is supposed to be. So I'm really excited to go back to what I'm writing and take those lessons, take those points, and bring them into my story.
Nice. Yeah, that's a solid one. I always feel like when I start doing research for this, now that I'm doing that regularly, I mean, it's a wealth of information. It's so great. And there's so many people that have so many different perspectives on it that it's like, if you can learn how to research an idea, it's such a wonderful thing because you can very quickly get through a lot of information on the internet, and a lot of it's actually really helpful if you use the right keywords. So yeah, happy hunting out there. Be safe. It is the internet, which is the Wild West. Anyway, so what's inspiring me this week is a YouTuber by the name of Struthless, or at least his channel is that name.
Yeah.
Struthless. Struthless. Anyway, he's an Australian guy, and he does a lot of like motivational videos, like emotional wellness videos, how to stop saying you can't do something, how to start saying no to people who you don't want to work with, just like generally how to organize your own thoughts and be a little bit happier while you're navigating a creative journey, which is can be painful for a lot of reasons. And so, and especially one that is prolonged or chronic or whatever, something that you want to span your entire life, you're going to run into a lot more roadblocks and difficulties and emotional beats that are hard to come back from. And he covers all that stuff. And he's just a very charismatic, fun-loving kind of dude. So I've been just watching the heck out of his videos. So
nice. Solid.
Been really good. So definitely check him out. Struthless on YouTube.
Shout out.
Okay. So there's your motivation. As always, send us your motivation if you want. We're always looking for new art to look at, and I'm always looking for new music to listen to. I think that's just the best.
Yeah.
So send it along wherever you can. Social media, here, wherever.
Sweet.
Let's get back into outlining, dude. So how did you take what we talked about, the structure, the utmost maybe pinning down of an idea that you could possibly find, and how did you take that raw, rigid form and turn it into a story? What was that process like?
So for me was looking, like I said, I had to world build first so that I could put myself in a place where I could answer some of the questions that we used from the reference, the Authors Learning Center. They also ask a couple questions before we actually got into that outline, like, who is your main character? And I was like, oh man, that's a good question.
That changes so much.
Right? And so I was like, well, let me go back and world build first. So I did a little bit of world building, and the template I used was one that we have already used and we've had a podcast about. It's our fantasy cities and our sci-fi ships episode. I used that exact same format, and it really flushed out my world. And I was like, okay, now I have an idea of my outline. And so as I was going...
Isn't it great when you don't have to reinvent everything?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I've gone back to a lot of our videos and our podcast. Was like, okay, this is where the resource was that I need to go to because I need help with outlining. Let me go here. And re-listening to those episodes has also helped me flesh out certain ideas that I've had. So this really just helped me put pen to paper for my main character, because that's what I struggled with right now, especially creating a new main character. I've been in the storytelling format of Dungeons and Dragons for so long that I am not the main character. Someone else has to be the main character. And so, or if I'm not the main character, or if I'm playing a game, it's like I'm accompanying the main character. We're like a main cast. So I've created NPCs that have like good things that they do, but not a main character. This really helped me flesh my main character's goals out, which was the biggest thing that I had to remember and really push through what their immediate goals are and what their long-term goals are. And when you think about like you as a being, like what are your long-term goals? Well, some people have a hard time answering that, what your short-term, long-term, mid-term goals are. And so how do I answer that for my character? And that will hopefully help the decision-making process as I continue to write through that. But what it also helped me was putting some type of idea, and it doesn't have to be the end idea, but some type of idea to the beginning and the end of a story and bookending it. Because sometimes as a creative, you just start writing, and maybe you end a scene, but you didn't end the story. And I've done that for so many times where I write a scene, I like the scene, but it has nowhere to go and no place in the story. And at one point early in some like fan fiction that I was writing, that I was, maybe 30, 40, 50 pages in, I just started writing scenes because like I don't know where I want this to go, but I want it to be a part of the same story. And I just started writing scenes, but there was no way for them to come together. It wasn't really making sense. This outline really helped me put it together and put a story together that I hope will one day be good enough to share to people, which I'll probably share it with you and a couple other people. But I want to write something that I can share to others outside of just like my small group of friends and be proud of and be like happy sharing that. And so this outline, I mean, you can look, I've got 14 pages now of me writing stuff. Again, I have the outline as well, formatted, and then I have my world building for each city. And I think that's going to just help my world feel alive. Cause I also, like I said, I think I've told you this, but this is going to be like my new like D&D world is what I'm trying to create here. But I want to create a story of a main character, whether this be like a myth or a legend that happens like in a further campaign. It's kind of like the end goal I have for this.
Nice. That's cool. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. I'm really excited. And outlining really helped push me to where I feel really excited to write. But now I'm going to be into starting to create scenes and I'm excited for the technical aspect of everything, but also a part of this and in the research when you're outlining, and this is something that helped me, was you're not writing your story. You're outlining, you're making the points. They don't have to be, legible to anyone but you. They don't have to make a whole lot of sense. They don't have to be, very wordy sentences. This is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. This is the impact that has on the character. And then at the top of my page, of my outline page, I'm writing ideas. Like, oh, this would be an interesting idea to add in. I already at the top of my page, like I need to start scratching stuff out because like, oh, I flushed this out now as I started answering the outline. And in the outline, I did write a little bit, but I didn't get carried away with it because I know the focus of the outline should be to outline and not to write.
Nice. Yeah, I found a lot of similar stuff as far as like, is it that putting the bones down makes it a lot easier to attach the muscles and make them useful. Yep. That you're not putting on the page, I don't know, let's say you have radioactive bugs in your story and, you're not going to put the moment that your character slaps a mosquito that's on his leg and saves the world. Mm-hmm. You're not putting that.
Yeah.
You're just putting, whatever the story beat is, the very small, like he meets here, he ends the problem, mm-hmm. And then, so for me, like I said earlier in the episode, that I revisit it like every day. I'll sit down for like 5 minutes, read it real quick, and then add the things I can add in 5-10 minutes that can change the story, make it more fleshed out. And now I've got a couple of pages of an outline that is really dense and is going to be dialogue heavy. And because what I'm working on is an episodic like radio program, when it's all said and done, it is very dialogue heavy and very narration heavy. So it's like, it's going to be just these quick scenes that are going to be very heavily motivated by dialogue, very heavily motivated by action, and action very heavily motivated on story. Mm-hmm. So nowhere in a short episode of like 10 or 15, 20 minutes can there be hangups where it's like, okay, well, we're going to really dive into this idea. So it's not going to be novelization, which really helps because I like a lot of people, once they fall in love with their ideas when writing, it's like, I'm going to describe the heck out of it. I'm going to be like J.R.R. Tolkien in The Trees. Like, I'm just going to describe the Shire till everybody's dead that's reading it. So I want to do the same thing. And so this is helping me reduce that down. And because I have that structure that is the outline, I'm able to do that in a much more efficient way. I'm able to very easily pair things off and say, yeah, this doesn't fit in this episode. But the other thing that was really cool is like, I'm doing 5 episodes because this is my first project like this. So what I'm doing is the episodes themselves are part of the 5-act structure, but each episode also has to adhere to a 3-act structure. So so it's fulfilling the role of each of the 5 acts, and each episode itself has a beginning, middle, and end that makes sense. So that they can all be one-offs, and you can listen to them and feel satisfied and ready for the next one. So I find that it is really exciting to me working with outlines right now, which is so funny because I was pulling my hair out to get away from them when I was a kid, learning about outlines. It's like, I hate this. This is terrible. Like, I just want to write. And now that I have this, it's like that swimming analogy is like, I can just play in the deep end of the pool now. Like, I can just throw things in and have as much fun as I want to have, because I've got this nice outline that I know is going to work, because I've been able to articulate it on a page or less. And, if you get down to the brass tacks, what your outline is, you can get it to very brief, and you can very briefly read through it and know whether the idea works or not. If the parts are there, they're going to show up. You're going to get excited reading about it, and if you show it to somebody else, they will too. They're like, oh yeah, this is entertaining. It's not a mystery when you arrive at a conclusion. And I think that's what's so intimidating and painful about outlines, is that you arrive at a conclusion right there at the beginning of the process. And you can see right then if this thing has the legs to continue, or if you need to go back to the drawing board. I'm not going to say pull your hair out or, burn something if it doesn't work the first time through an outline. Like, that's the beginning of the process. Don't do that. But definitely this is a good time to revise, revisit, and make sure that your puzzle pieces are where you need them to be, so that by the time you get to the words, the end, you can be really proud of and happy with your story. I think that's this is a great time in the process to do that. So that was a really natural conclusion. I don't know how I did that. I'm feeling better doing these every week. I'm like, I'm getting good at this.
Yes, sir.
And Michael, you're okay. No, I'm kidding.
I'm getting there. Yeah. I'm getting there.
Always the crowd favorite. I'm always going to be in the shadow of Michael here. Move behind the light. No, we really appreciate everybody for listening, and really appreciate you, Michael, for all your insights, and
appreciate you,
and for aggregating all this helpful information. And
absolutely,
wherever you're at in the world, we do have tons of listeners that are all over the place, and it is mind blowing, and it is wonderful. And whether you were in Cameroon, in the continent of Africa, whether you're in India, whether you're in the UK somewhere, whether you're in Texas like us, we hope you have a wonderful day, and we are so grateful you're here. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.